The crowbar slipped against wet stone as I pried at the floor panel, my breath fogging in the frozen air. Below, in the narrow gap, gold coins glinted in my flashlight beam. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. My dog Rex whined beside me, pawing at the opening he'd discovered beneath the rotted floorboards. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Not from the cold. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course not. The cottage sat 3 miles from the nearest paved road, surrounded by woods that had probably looked the same for centuries. I was alone with a fortune I couldn't explain and a past I'd been running from since I left the service. The smart move was obvious. Call the police. Report the find. Let someone else deal with whatever complications came with discovering buried treasure in a condemned building I'd bought for $8,000. But I'd stopped making smart moves the day I came home from Afghanistan. 3 weeks earlier, the real estate agent's expression said everything her professional smile tried to hide. Mr. Torres, I have to be honest. This property needs significant work. The inspection report alone is 40 pages. I stood in the overgrown driveway, studying the stone cottage. 2 stories, maybe 1,000 square feet, with a slate roof that sagged in the middle and windows that hadn't seen glass in years. Ivy consumed the eastern wall. The whole structure tilted slightly, like it was trying to slide down the hillside. It was perfect. How much? I asked. The estate is asking $12,000, but between you and me, they'd take less. It's been on the market for 2 years. No water, no electricity, septic systems collapsed. You'd basically be buying land with an expensive demolition project on it. $8,000 cash. Closing in a week. She blinked. Mr. Torres, I don't think you understand. I understand fine. I turned to look at her. I need a place before winter. I've got tools, construction experience, and a VA loan for repairs. Either someone wants to sell me this cottage, or I keep looking. The truth was simpler and sadder. This was all I could afford. 6 months ago, I'd had a job, an apartment in Denver, something resembling a normal life. Then the nightmares got worse. Then the panic attacks started happening during the day. Then I'd shoved my supervisor during an episode one barely remembered. And suddenly I was unemployed with a record and a diagnosis that made landlords nervous. The cottage wasn't a dream. It was what remained when dreams ran out. She made the call. 3 days later, I signed papers in a lawyer's office that smelled like old books and older money. The estate lawyer, a thin man named Whitmore, pushed the deed across his desk like he was glad to be rid of it. The property's been in the Aldrich family since 1847, he said. Last owner died 15 years ago. No heirs willing to invest in repairs. You're getting history, Mr. Torres. I'm getting shelter. I corrected, signing my name. The first week, I worked on making one room livable. I cleared debris, patched the worst holes, installed a wood stove I'd bought used. Rex, a German Shepherd mix I'd adopted from a shelter 2 years ago, supervised from whatever sunny spot he could find, occasionally investigating interesting smells. He'd been a service dog washout, too friendly and too easily distracted. We were a good match. By the second week, I had a generator running and enough tarps to keep most of the rain out. The nearest town, population 300, had a hardware store that extended me credit when I explained what I was doing. The owner, a woman named Sarah with gray hair and kind eyes, seemed more interested in me having a safe place than in getting paid immediately. Aldrich Place, huh? She'd said, loading supplies into my truck. My grandmother used to tell stories about that cottage. Said old man Aldrich was eccentric, didn't trust banks. Smart man, I'd replied, thinking of my own savings, everything I owned in a fireproof box under the truck's seat. Or paranoid. Sometimes hard to tell the difference. I thought about that a lot since. The third week, I started on the floors. The downstairs was flagstone, covered in decades of dirt and rot. I worked section by section, pulling up debris, scrubbing stone, checking for structural damage. Rex stayed close, like he always did when my hands started shaking too badly. He was doing that when he found it. Nosing at a corner near the fireplace. Whining in that specific way that meant something was wrong or interesting or both. I almost ignored him. Almost kept working. Instead, I went to look. The stone he'd pawed was loose. When I pulled it up, there was another beneath it. Wood this time, old and water damaged. And beneath that, when I pried it up with the crowbar, darkness and the smell of earth and something else. The smell of metal that hadn't seen air in a very long time. I lowered my flashlight into the gap. The beam caught gold, neat stacks of coins in the narrow space. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled up another stone. More wooden panels. More coins beneath them, along with something else, the edge of what looked like a metal box. Rex barked once, sharp and urgent. I looked up to find headlights coming up the driveway through the twilight. I dropped the panel back into place, my mind racing. No one visited. I was 3 miles from nowhere. The truck stopped. A door opened. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Then a knock on my door, firm and official. "Mr. Torres? I'm Special Agent Chen with the FBI. We need to talk about your property." I placed the crowbar behind the door before opening it. Old habits from night patrols. Know where your weapons are. Always have an exit. The woman on my sagging porch wore a dark suit under a practical jacket, her badge catching the generator's light. "Agent Chen." I kept my body blocking the doorway. "Problem. May I come in? It's about the property's previous owner. The previous owner died 15 years ago. I'm aware. This concerns what he may have left behind." Her eyes moved past me, scanning what she could see of the interior. "Mr. Torres, has anything unusual turned up during your renovations?" The gold coins were 15 feet behind me, barely concealed under rotted wood panels. My mouth went dry. "Like what?" "We've received information suggesting Marcus Aldrich may have hidden items of significant value on this property. Items that don't legally belong to the estate." Rex growled low in his throat. He never growled at visitors. "I bought this place legally," I said. "Whatever's here is mine. That depends on what it is and where it came from." She pulled out her phone, showed me a photograph of an elderly man with fierce eyes. Marcus Aldrich was investigated in 1995 for his connection to a museum robbery in Boston. Nothing was ever proven, but several artifacts from that theft were never recovered. Gold coins from the 1850s California gold rush, valued at roughly $2.8 million. The number hit like a physical blow. I'd been thinking thousands, maybe tens of thousands, not millions. "If you found something," Shun continued, "the smart move is cooperation. Help us recover stolen property, and there may be a finder's fee. Try to keep it, and you're looking at charges." Every instinct I'd developed in 8 years of military service was screaming. Something was wrong with this picture. FBI agents didn't show up alone to rural properties at dusk. They didn't offer deals before seeing evidence. They didn't look nervous. And Chun was nervous, her eyes moving too fast, her free hand hovering near her jacket in a way that felt wrong. "Do you have a warrant?" I asked. "I'm offering you a chance to." "A warrant, Agent Chun. Yes or no?" Her jaw tightened. "Not yet, but I can have one by morning. Then come back in the morning with the warrant, and probably some backup, since you seem pretty sure there's millions of dollars here." I started closing the door. "I'll be happy to cooperate with a proper investigation." Her hand shot out, catching the door. "Mr. Torres, you're making a mistake. Wouldn't be my first. People have died over those coins. Marcus Aldrich didn't just steal them. He killed the security guard during the robbery. Never faced justice because they couldn't prove he was there. If you found his stash, you're in danger." "From who?" "Old Marcus is dead. From his partner. The one who was never identified. The one who's been searching for those coins for 30 years. She leaned closer, and I could smell coffee on her breath, see the exhaustion in her eyes. "I'm trying to help you. By showing up unannounced, alone, offering deals before seeing evidence." I shook my head. I spent 8 years reading situations in places where getting it wrong meant dying. "You're not FBI." Her expression changed, something cold sliding behind the professional mask. "No," she said quietly. "I'm not." Her hand came out of her jacket with a gun. Rex launched himself at the door, barking furiously. I slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt I'd installed 3 days ago. A gunshot punched through the wood above my head, the sound enormous in the small space. I grabbed the crowbar and ran for the back door, Rex ahead of me. Another shot, then the front door shuttered under a kick. The lock would hold. It was new, solid, but not forever. Outside, I sprinted for the tree line, the dog at my heels. My truck was by the front, blocked by whoever Chun really was. The woods were my only option, though running into the forest in darkness with an armed pursuer was a nightmare scenario. The cottage door crashed. Open behind me. I made the trees as another gunshot cracked, bark exploding from a trunk to my left. Then I was in thick undergrowth, branches whipping my face, roots grabbing at my feet. Rex stayed close, his dark coat making him nearly invisible. Behind us, a flashlight beam swept through the trees. I needed distance, time to think. The woman wanted the coins badly enough to come alone, to pull a gun on a veteran in a remote location. That suggested desperation or greed or both. It also suggested she thought she could search the cottage without interference once I was dealt with. My lungs burned. The cold air felt like inhaling knives. But my body remembered this. The weight of gear, the urgency of movement, the crystal clarity that came when everything went wrong. I'd spent years wishing I could leave that version of myself behind. Tonight, I was grateful he was still here. I circled back, moving quietly now, using techniques I'd learned in mountains on the other side of the world. The cottage's lights were visible through the trees. The woman's truck sat in my driveway. A rental, I noticed, not a government vehicle. Another tell I should have caught earlier. She was inside. I could see her flashlight moving through the windows. Searching. Rex pressed against my leg, warm and solid. I touched his head, taking comfort in the contact. Then I pulled out my phone. Still no signal. The nearest house was 2 miles down the mountain. I could run there, call the real police. But that meant leaving everything. The cottage, my tools, my small foothold on stability. And the coins that might mean the difference between barely surviving and actually building a life. It also meant Chen, or whatever her real name was, might disappear before police arrived. Might destroy evidence. Might come back later when I was sleeping. I thought about Sarah at the hardware store, her kindness. About the lawyer Whitmore, handing me the deed. About everyone who'd given me a chance when they didn't have to. Then I thought about the men I'd served with, the ones who hadn't made it home. How they'd given everything. And I was here, alive, with a chance. I moved toward the cottage, Rex silent beside me. The woman had left her truck running, driver's door open, ready for a quick escape. I moved to it carefully, seeing a laptop on the passenger seat covered in papers. Rex stayed in the tree line while I grabbed the computer and papers, then retreated back to the shadows. The laptop was unlocked, showing an email account. I scrolled quickly, my photographer's eye-catching details. Messages from someone named Marcus. Not the dead Marcus Aldrich. These were dated 3 months ago. My blood went cold as I read. The coins are there. I watched him bury them in 1993 before the cancer got bad. He always said the cottage would outlast him. New owner doesn't know what he has. Get them before he finds them. Your brother's medical bills are my responsibility. This settles my debt. Marcus Aldrich had a living relative. Someone who'd known about the coins. Someone who'd sent this woman, Sean, or whatever her real name was, to retrieve them before I discovered them. The papers were property records, photographs of the cottage, and a detailed floor plan with notes. Someone had marked the fireplace area with a red circle. I heard footsteps inside. She was getting closer to the hiding spot. My phone showed 1 bar of signal, flickering. I dialed 911, praying it would connect. 911, what's your emergency? This is David Torres at 4547 Mountain Road. There's an armed intruder on my property, claiming to be FBI. She's fired shots. I need police. Sir, stay on the line. The signal died. I looked at Rex. At the cottage. At the truck that could take me away from all of this. Then I did something probably stupid. I took the laptop and walked to the front door. I called the police. I shouted. They're coming. But I have your laptop. I've read the emails from Marcus Aldrich's nephew. I know the whole story. Silence. Then, you're bluffing. Try me. Come out unarmed. We'll wait for the real FBI together. Or run now, and maybe get away. I paused. I don't actually care about keeping the coins. They're stolen property. Blood money. But I do care about people shooting at me on my own land. More silence. I counted heartbeats, watching the windows. The front door opened slowly. She emerged, hands visible but empty, her face tight with anger and something else, fear. The nephew, she said. Marcus, the younger Marcus. He's sick, liver failure, needs a transplant, and doesn't have insurance. I'm his wife. He told me about his uncle, about the coins that could save him. I thought. She laughed bitterly. I thought I could be a hero. By shooting me? I panicked. You were military, trained. I was scared and desperate and stupid. She sank onto the porch steps. I'm not a criminal. I'm a teacher. Marcus showed me those emails from his uncle, and I thought we could just retrieve what was already ours. His inheritance. Stolen inheritance, I corrected. From a robbery where someone died. I know. God, I know. But when you're desperate, when someone you love is dying. She looked up at me, tears on her face. What would you have done? I thought about the men I'd served with. The ones who'd died. The ones who'd survived, but carried wounds no one could see. What would I have done to save them? How far would I have gone? I don't know, I admitted. But firing at me wasn't it. Sirens echoed in the distance. The 911 call must have given them enough. The next hours were police lights and statements, and a crime scene team carefully excavating the coins. The real FBI arrived at dawn, along with museum representatives and lawyers. The lead agent, a weary man named Foster, confirmed everything. The coins were from the Boston Museum robbery. Marcus Aldrich had been the prime suspect, but died before they could build a case. His nephew Marcus Jr. had received a letter 6 months ago explaining everything. The nephew isn't facing charges, Foster told me as the sun rose. The letter was confession from a dying man. He had no proof, no involvement in the original crime. The wife. He looked toward the police car where she sat. That's complicated. Assault with a deadly weapon. But her attorney will argue desperation, maybe get it pled down. And me? I asked. You did everything right. Bought the property legally, reported the find, cooperated fully. He handed me a business card. The museum has a reward policy for recovered stolen property. 5% of assessed value. That's about $140,000. The number didn't feel real. I'd gone from $8,000 to my name to a 6-figure payout in less than 24 hours. There's paperwork, Foster continued, and it'll take a few months to process. But yeah, you're getting paid. After they left, after the last police car disappeared down the driveway, I sat on the porch with Rex. The cottage looked different in daylight, still ruined, still barely standing, but mine. The morning air was cold enough to see my breath. Sarah from the hardware store arrived around noon with coffee and sandwiches. Heard you had excitement, she said dryly. You could say that. Also heard you turned in millions in stolen gold when you could have kept it. Wasn't really mine to keep. She studied me with those kind, sharp eyes. World needs more people who understand that. She handed me an envelope. Town council heard what happened. We don't have much, but we pulled together enough to cover your tab at the store and add some extra for materials. Figure a man who does right by stolen gold is good for his debts. Inside was $3,000 in checks and cash. I can't. You can and you will. Consider it an investment in a neighbor. She smiled. Besides, in a few months you'll have that reward money. You can pay it forward then. After she left, I walked through the cottage, seeing it differently now. Not just shelter, not just survival, but possibility. With the reward money, I could fix this place properly. Solar panels, new roof, real plumbing, maybe even help other veterans find their own foothold. Rex barked at something in the woods, probably a deer. I watched him chase shadows through the trees, his tail wagging, completely present in the moment without nightmares or regrets. I pulled out my phone and called the VA counselor I'd been avoiding. When she answered, I said, "It's David Torres. I'm ready to talk about the PTSD, about the panic attacks, all of it." "David," she said warmly, "I'm glad. Let's set something up." That night, I started working on the floor again, filling in the hole where the coins had been, covering it with clean stone, erasing the evidence of old crimes and older greed. The cottage would never be perfect. The bones were too old, had survived too much. But it would be home, and that was enough. Rex settled by the wood stove, his head on his paws, watching me work. Outside, the first real snow of winter began to fall, covering everything in clean white, covering the past, making space for whatever came next. I thought about the woman in the police car, desperate to save someone she loved. About old Marcus Aldrich, carrying his crimes to the grave. About the guard who died in a robbery decades ago, whose family had never gotten justice. And I thought about the strange grace of stumbling onto someone else's wrong and being able to make it right. Not through any virtue of my own, but simply by being there when the choice arrived. The cottage creaked in the wind, settling into itself like it always had, like it always would. I picked up my hammer and kept working.